Thanks to Todd Milne for our introit this morning once again, and welcome to all of you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane's live stream of our service here. Great to have all of you with us. I want to begin by mentioning, as always, our mission statement, which is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we say in short, and you're welcome to say it with me, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to one and all. As always, we embrace all of the uniqueness that we have as individuals, our unique beliefs and background, lifestyle, experiences, our differences. All that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. So thanks for being here. If we have folks that might be joining us for the first time, we're also very glad to know that you're with us. So welcome to one and all. I'm going to give you a little extra time this morning to greet one another. Before we do that, since we are still in May, I want to put in another plug for the $10,000 matching grant that an anonymous couple in our congregation have put up on behalf of the Vanessa Behan Center, a center that helps to prevent child abuse and neglect by providing a safe place for parents to drop their children off for a day, a night, maybe longer during difficult times. So, and of course, their need has increased during the COVID-19 crisis. So for those who would like to contribute to this, we want to thank the anonymous donors for making this possible. And you can contribute again by going to www.vanessabehan.org. That's their website, www.vanessabehan.org/UUCS match. So I'm going to keep saying that since this is going to continue throughout May. So thank you all so much for your generosity and kindness. So yeah, let's take a few moments now to virtually greet one another with a brief phone call, a text, an email, whatever works for you. Let one another know that we're still here, we're still supporting each other, and even though we can't be in each other's physical presence, we are certainly in each other's spiritual presence. Thank you, and I do encourage you to continue to stay in touch with one another as much as possible during this odd time in history. I just went back to say hi to Todd Milne and saw the shot of the church with all the empty seats here, and I think it just says so much about this historic moment that we are in our world and in our society, to see a minister at a pulpit speaking before what appears to be an empty room. But I think it is an archetypal image of this time that will stay with us for a long time, and it's an important image. And even more important is knowing that the seats may be empty, but our community is not. And I have no trouble at all knowing that you are here with me when I look at that camera. I see you and I feel your presence. So this is an extraordinary time, but it's also an extraordinary time in history that communications technologies have gotten to the point where we do have alternatives and we can stay in community. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful to know that you're there. We are going to have our chalice lighting now, and I'm sure Todd will pan to our chalice, which I lit before the service started, as a symbol of our faith, a symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found. Our opening words today are from Unitarian minister William Schultz, right from the back of our own hymnal. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. I did not receive any special request for candles of care this morning, but as you can perhaps see over my shoulder, our candle is flickering behind me as a symbol of this important part of our ritual. I'm guessing some of you might have some candles at home or something to light at this time, so we're going to move right into a period of silence on behalf of all those in need in our lives and in our world at this time, as well as some specific folks that you may have on your mind and on your heart this morning. And wherever you are, whoever you're with, you're welcome to whisper those names or say them aloud to each other at this time. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. It is now time for our story for all ages, or in my case, our visitor for all ages. Let's see who is with us today. Always enjoy bringing a special guest to help me out. And look who is back, if it's not the silliest, williest, nilliest old bear of them all, Winnie the Pooh. And it's great to have you back, Pooh.
It's good to be back, Todd.
Well, what is it that has caused you to leave the 100-acre wood today? Are you looking for Christopher Robin again?
No, Christopher Robin is safe at home. And sometimes he says hello from his little glass box.
Oh, you mean he calls you from his cell phone? Well, I'm glad that he's staying in touch. So what are you doing here?
I'm looking for ejection. Tiglet told me about.
Ejection? I'm afraid I don't understand. What exactly is ejection?
I don't know either. I was hoping you could tell me.
Well, I don't really know what it is, and if you don't know what it is, why are you looking for it?
Christopher Robin says some of the best things to find are the things you didn't know you were looking for.
Well, that's pretty good advice, but in that case, I've never really heard the word ejection used by itself before. It's usually accompanied by a prefix.
A prefix?
No, not a tree fix, a prefix. That's a shorter word that goes in front of a longer word that helps us kind of understand its meaning.
You mean the way that Tiglet is shorter than I am and understands me, and the way that I am shorter than Christopher Robin and understand him?
Well, that's not exactly. So let me try to explain it another way.
Let's.
Okay. If I remember my Latin, the word ejection means to throw. But we don't use it by itself. So we might say, for example, ejection, which means to throw away, or objection, which means to throw in the way of, or rejection, which means to throw back, or projection, which means to throw something forward.
Oh, that sounds a lot like playing two sticks. I like the idea of playing projection. What are the rules?
The rules of projection. Well, let's see. Since it means throwing something forward, I guess the most important rule is to make sure that nobody is in front of you when you project.
I wouldn't want anyone to get hit with my projections.
Yes, it's kind of like the time that you were walking in circles hunting for woozles. Do you remember that?
Yes, and Tiglet joined me in case they were hostile.
Yeah, that's right. And before long, you saw two sets of tracks that you thought belonged to two woozles.
And then a third set of tracks I thought belonged to a whistle.
I do remember that. And then you just kept walking in circles, and the number of footprints kept increasing until you thought there were lots of woozles and whistles, and Piglet got scared and wanted to leave.
Then Christopher Robin told us we were only walking in circles and making our own tracks.
That's exactly right. So projection is kind of like that. It's thinking something bad about someone else when you're really only looking at your own tracks.
So there may be no reason to be afraid of woozles and whistles after all.
If you ever meet some, you might find out that they're quite nice.
Ejections is a very fun game. But now I think I'd like to go find some quite nice woozles and whistles to play with.
Well, that sounds like a very good idea, and I hope you have fun and look forward to seeing you next time, Pooh.
Thank you, Todd. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Pooh. Pooh is a very wise for a simple bear. So let's go into our meditation now with these words from Lao Tzu. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center pole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes that make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. Stanley Milgram wrote the book on obedience, and my favorite writer, Eric Fromm, wrote the book on disobedience. I'm going to read just a little bit of that this morning. Why is humanity so prone to obey, and why is it so difficult for humanity to disobey? As long as I am obedient to the power of the state, the church, or public opinion, I feel safe and protected. In fact, it makes little difference what power it is that I'm obedient to. It is always an institution or men who use force in one form or another and who fraudulently claim omniscience and omnipotence. My obedience makes me part of the power I worship, and hence I feel strong. I can make no error since it decides for me. I cannot be alone because it watches over me. I cannot commit a sin because it does not let me do so. And even if I do sin, the punishment is only the way of returning to the almighty power. Indeed, freedom and the capacity for disobedience are inseparable. Thanks again, Todd Milne, for that. My sermon today is entitled The UU Exorcist. So hold hands. No, it's not scary. Maybe it is, a little bit. It turns out that every major world religion includes some form of exorcism. These practices can be as mild and playful as the Gutor, the Tibetan annual Banishing Evil Spirits holiday, held on December 29th to rid themselves of all negativity by dancing and eating before the new year begins. Not much different, I suppose, than the fun that we have dressing up as scary creatures on Halloween. Or they can be as extreme as a Catholic priest using scripture, crosses, and holy water to free individuals they believe have been possessed literally by evil spirits. We know that there are references to demon possession dating back to the writings of the Christian scriptures, but exorcism, as it's thought of in Western culture these days, occurred mostly during the Middle Ages, between the 4th and 15th centuries CE, although historian Francis Young says the 16th and 17th centuries were the golden age of the demoniac. Belief in exorcism and its practices began to diminish after that, beginning in the 18th century, particularly here in the U.S. But Young goes on to say that the 21st century, right, we're only 20 years in, the 21st century is the second golden age of the exorcist. Remarkable. According to a relatively recent article in The Atlantic entitled American Exorcism, belief in demon possession has again become widespread. Polls conducted in recent decades, it says, by Gallup and the data firm YouGov suggest that roughly half of Americans believe demonic possession is real. The percentage who believe in the devil is even higher, and in fact has been growing. Gallup polls show that the number rose from 55% in 1990 to 70% in 2007. According to a 2014 Vice report on the topic, one of these significant periods was the 1970s, where the United States saw a 50% rise in exorcisms. According to the aforementioned Atlantic article, Father Vincent Lampert, an official exorcist for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, received 1,700 phone calls or emails requests for exorcisms in 2018 when the article was written, by far the most he'd ever gotten in 1 year. And this may explain a lot about Indiana. The popularity of blockbuster horror movies like Rosemary's Baby in 1968, The Exorcist in 1973, and The Omen in 1976 are either indicative of or a contributor to these growing trends. In 1975, according to Vice, James Busotto, a psychiatrist, published an article about several alleged cases of cinematic neurosis, where after viewing The Exorcist, people believed that they were possessed by the devil. That may help explain some of it. Whatever the reasons for this alarming rise in primitive superstition, it doesn't bode well for Enlightenment thinking in our postmodern age. Postmodernism's beginnings in the late 1950s coincides closely with this rising and resurging belief in demon possession, whereas the modernist era reflected the Enlightenment's emphasis upon objective truth and reality, in reason, logic, and science, in the belief that there's something essential about human nature that connects us all, that language refers to real things, and that we can learn to better understand nature by developing general theories about how the world works, postmodernism rejects all of this in favor of the idea that all truth is subjective, therefore relative, so there's no such thing as objective reality, and one person's truth is as good as any other. Today, the whole country has become like Disneyland. Believe whatever you want, and whatever you believe is true. When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Unfortunately, unsubstantiated truth is still heralded as a principle that's worth defending and fighting over. Many now believe that they have a right not to have to hear dissenting views and to defend themselves against those who disagree with them, because opposing ideas and those who express them are dangerous and harmful. Increasingly, all of us are also being enculturated now to believe we have a moral obligation to defend the truths of others, no matter how nonsensical, by squelching dissenting opinions and punishing those who express them. As I have oft said, the definition of tolerance has been flipped upside down. Instead of meaning the ability to listen to those we disagree with, it now means not saying things others might disagree with. Arguing against unsubstantiated assertions, questioning the sovereign authority of anyone's subjective beliefs, or citing reason, science, and facts makes us offenders and increasingly heretics in this new postmodern fantasy land that old Enlightenment codgers like me find ourselves drowning in. So I've just drawn a correlation between the rising belief in demon possession and postmodernism, if you didn't catch that, whether it's a causal correlation or not. American Unitarianism, by contrast, is an Enlightenment religious philosophy, which is largely defined by its historic rejection of supernaturalism and its embrace of reason and empiricism. Rejecting the old ideas of original sin and human depravity, which lend themselves well to the belief in demon possession, early Unitarianism advocated the humanistic ethic of the social gospel, believing religion should concentrate on human goodness, human welfare, and human agency, rather than upon the supernatural and the miraculous. According to a 1967 survey of 12,000 Unitarian Universalists, not long after the Association of Unitarians and Universalists was formed, less than 3% claimed to believe in a supernatural being. Less than 3% in 1967. That's changed a lot in recent years, as the postmodern influences of the academy have begun infiltrating Unitarian Universalism, and with it a range of unique manifestations of the corresponding belief in the devil and demon possession. I suspect that most UUs still don't literally believe in demons, but many now seem to think that it's okay to demonize others, especially those who question the unsoundness of their subjective truths. Those of us who still think Unitarianism is supposed to be defined by reason, freedom of conscience, and tolerance in the traditional sense of the word, find ourselves bewildered and shocked by the unprecedented and un-Unitarian behavior of some. For us, the demonization of others because of their ideas is the very antithesis of our liberal religion and what drew us to it. Yet I would argue the ancient and still popular belief in demon possession has always been rooted in the demonization of those with dissenting beliefs and the wish to control what they do and don't say. In Western religion, Dogmas and creeds have been enforced by pressuring dissenters to recant, or silencing, ostracizing, banishing, and otherwise punishing them, and sometimes burning them as witches or exorcising them as demoniacs. In Jesus' day, according to the Christian scriptures, the religious authorities claimed the exclusive right to both label someone possessed and to declare them cleansed of their demons. In this sense, someone pronounced possessed had been officially demonized by the authorities. Theologian William Herzog suggests that this was meant to delegitimize what they had to say. It would be the same today as declaring someone insane because we disagree with them, or nowadays calling them a racist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, and so on, in order to invalidate anything that they might write or say. Demonization is the height of ad hominem illogic, and demon possession is but the unconscious projections of those who demonize others. A demoniac isn't someone who has been possessed by evil spirits, but someone who has been demonized by the malicious spirits of others. In his book, Jesus, Justice, and the Reign of God, Herzog explains that under the tyranny of the Roman government, demonic possession became a form of oblique protest against the colonial overlord, because if he is viewed as possessed, a demoniac can express what others feel but repress. Under the guise of being declared legally insane by the authorities, if you will, a demonized person could get away with saying whatever they wanted because most people considered them raving mad. What got Jesus into trouble was hanging out with them and treating them as perfectly sane, just as he did other outcasts, effectively legitimizing the voices of those who have been officially silenced. It is only by Beelzebub, the priest declared, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons. Herzog says, when unauthorized exorcists rise to address the problem, collaborators will stigmatize them by using witchcraft accusations or branding them as sorcerers. So if you simply stand up for those who have been demonized, you're likely to get demonized too. It reminds me of what recently happened to my good officer, Reverend Rick Davis, who received an official letter that he had been removed from the good officer program. And in that letter, a director of the UU Ministers Association specifically stated, "I am aware that you have advocated in support of Reverend Dr. Eckloff through your communications with and preaching within at least two congregations, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, Washington, and the Unitarian Universalist Church of Salem, Oregon." Of course, Reverend Rick wasn't advocating for me, but for our Unitarian values, for his own values, which he has every right to do in a free pulpit. Saying otherwise is unprecedented in our faith. Nevertheless, just as I have been officially demonized by our new church authorities, Rick has been likewise demonized for legitimizing the concerns that I have been expressing. That's how it works. While it's not possible to be spiritually possessed by demons, it's common to be politically demonized for saying the wrong thing. Unitarianism has been able to avoid this shameful and tyrannical behavior until now. And I'm going to keep fighting to turn it around so long as I still consider Unitarian Universalism worth fighting for. In his book, A History of Exorcism in Catholic Theology, Francis Young points out that while official Catholic theology presents exorcism as a weapon in the heavenly battle between Christ and Satan, exorcism is also a political act on the human level of church history. The entire canonical process of exorcism, beginning with the authorization of the exorcist and ending in the spoken rite, dramatically brings into focus questions of authority and legitimacy to a greater extent than any other rite of the Church. Exorcism brings about principles of authority and legitimacy more than any other rite of the Church, Young says. This would again indicate the original reason for exorcism was about officially nullifying what others had to say. This further explains why the very word exorcism comes from the Greek word exorkismos, which translates binding by oath. Binding by oath, that's what exorcism means. So whether it was by forcing the demoniac to recant and swear an oath to orthodoxy, or having a group of priests counter the demonized individual by reciting orthodox ideas, exorcism is about the expression of ideas, not the possession of souls. Perhaps the suppression of souls. This changed for a while after Jesus rebutted the authorities by modeling anyone's right to declare demoniacs cleansed and acceptable, legitimized. Early Christianity followed suit, and the power to exorcise demons was considered a spiritual power of godly individuals and no longer the exclusive right of religious authorities. Unfortunately, it eventually reverted back to its authoritarian origins, just as Christianity itself did. Indeed, Francis Young says, the Middle Ages were a period of crisis and transition for exorcism, in which it was transformed from the charismatic, saint-focused practice of late antiquity into a liturgical rite invoking priestly authority. It's about authoritarianism. This is the crossroad that our liberal religion and liberalism itself is in today. Shall we continue to proclaim the right and obligation of every person to embrace and legitimize the voices of those who have been demonized and silenced by the authorities, or shall we fully establish our own church authority to tell us what to think and punish those who think otherwise? Not that it's a question limited to Unitarian Universalism. It extends to liberal institutions around the world, but the direction Unitarian Universalism is heading is the question that I'm addressing here. Are we going to be a religion that officially demonizes others in order to uphold our own authority, or will we retain and strengthen our long-standing commitment to reason and freedom of conscience and our common humanity? I hope the latter is the case. Unitarianism has long stood as the antithesis to other religions in its promotion of individual autonomy, freedom of conscience, and our acceptance of our differences without divisiveness. If we're going to successfully become a religion that demonizes dissenters, however, we must first become an authoritarian religion whose authority is enforced with dogmatism. In 2012, Reverend Frederick Muir gave the keynote address during a UU ministerial conference during which he referred to the Trinity of errors. The Trinity of errors, he believes, is stymieing our religion. A persistent, pervasive, and disruptive commitment to individualism, exceptionalism, and our allergy to authority and power. In brief, Muir suggested the very things many consider the strengths of liberal religion to be its weaknesses. To eradicate these three errors, he went on to suggest that we must become a covenantal religion, which in my opinion has become the UU word for dogma. Muir actually goes on to say that we need to establish something that has eluded Unitarian Universalism, a doctrine of church. And that we cannot do both covenant and individualism. We cannot do both covenant and individualism. In other words, we rid ourselves of this error of individualism by becoming a covenantal religion. Of course, this is just one lecture, but its influence upon our national leadership was proven in an article written by our current UUA president just prior to last year's General Assembly here in Spokane. The article in UU World entitled "The Power of We" cites Muir's trinity of errors: individualism, exceptionalism, and our allergy to authority. Then admits, in shaping General Assembly this year, the power of we is not just about one event, but a broader shift in our faith to move from individualism to a shared belonging to one another, to our communities, and to a larger mission. Now, there's a lot packed into this superficially innocuous wording, but the article's redefining of individualism to mean the very opposite of what it means should not go unnoticed. In practice, it continues, mission and covenant are an antidote to individualism. That's what's happening here. Instead of being what's now called an I-church, according to these articles, comprised of independent member congregations, there is a move to shift us to an authoritarian organization bound by Muir's doctrine of church, now guised by the more palatable word covenant. This move towards groupthink should alarm any free thinker. The alternative to the neo-orthodoxy overtaking our liberal religion is modeled by the topsy-turvy history of exorcism. We can allow the establishment of church authorities that enforce a new dogma of church by instantly demonizing anyone who dissents, anyone who expresses independent thinking, anyone who is officially diagnosed with an allergy to authority. Or we can remain a religion that renounces all forms of authoritarianism and embraces those who have been demonized by the authorities, whether we agree with them or not, because we are fundamentally committed to individualism and its freedom of speech and its freedom of conscience. I don't believe in demon possession, but I know what it's like to be officially and unofficially demonized. And I know there are many in our world today who have been demonized into silence and illegitimacy. But I believe our religion is at its best when we use our power of compassion to set the captives free, to heal those who have been muted, and to embrace those who have been demonized. Thank you. For our benediction, I offer these words from Edward Everett Hale, a Unitarian Universalist minister during the Civil War and grandson of Nathan Hale, the famed American spy during the Revolutionary War. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Peace, shalom, salam alaikum, amen.